Hello everyone, Chaos here, and welcome to another old school RuneScape video. I gave you guys 150 tips and tricks in 2022, 151 tips and tricks in 2023, and we keep the tradition going, as today I have 130 tips and tricks for your RuneScape adventures to start to 2024 on the right foot. Boys and girls, this is not a sponsored segment, but rather me thanking each and every single one of you for interacting with the channel in 2023, which performance-wise completely exceeded my wildest expectations, so thank you so much for that one. I made a little rambly video in the description if you want to, hear more thoughts about video making, what's coming in 2024, but I'm not going to interrupt more of this video. I really hope you enjoy, and if you want to watch that rambly video, I will see you then. For every new subscriber and the like this video receives, I will give my puppy one new toy to play with, and of course a pat on her little head. I appreciate each and every one of you very much, so thanks for helping out with the YouTube overlord. The only disclaimer I have for this video is that if you have watched the previous iterations, there could be a few tips I'm going to repeat only because they are so important. As you can see, this video is also going to be pretty chunky, so without any further ado, I really hope you enjoy, and let's begin. We are going to start with account security once again. If you haven't, make sure to upgrade to a Jagex account for improved security, including passwords that you can put uppercase and special characters in. And no, Jagex is not paying me to promote this. Along with a new Jagex account, I would recommend having an email account you only use for RuneScape and nothing else. With the data leaks happening from time to time, you don't want your email tied to your RuneScape account to be out there. If it does happen, however, make sure to have two-factor authenticator for both your email account and the RuneScape account. This will make it extremely difficult for your account to be compromised with the 2 layers of security. It goes without saying, but be wary of every link you click on, especially if you receive an email that looks like it comes from Jagex. Nowadays, they can look fairly convincing, so never interact with an email you are not expecting. Last but not least, make sure you have a trusty antivirus and scan your computer every now and then. This is not a sponsored segment, but I personally have been using Malwarebytes for several years, and I am extremely happy with their product. Related to account security, we jump onto 5 common scams. If you ever see people buying items for higher than normal, just ignore them. Long story short, you put your item up for trade, and they give you a teleport tab hoping you accept them to go to Camelot. This happened to a stream viewer recently. Make sure you never manually download anything people tell you to, especially if it's a supposed Runelite plugin. They will take control of your client and steal all your items if they can. One that I have personally seen before is people asking you to be on a video, or asking you to buy items on the GE because they hit the limit and ask you to add them if they need more. They just want to socially engineer you later on. Another one that has to do with social interaction is people trying to convince you to help them anti-lure someone. You may think you're smarter than them and yoink a few million GP, but trust me, the end goal is just to take you to a PvP world. The stupidest one I still have to mention is avoid gambling bots at all times. They even have other bots interacting with them to make it look legit, but as we all know, it's too good to be true. You will never really outsmart these cockroaches. The next 10 are some of my favorite Runelite features. If you hold Alt, you can move your inventory, chat, and minimap around. I'm not going to spend too much time on these because I have a new Runelite plugins video coming very soon. A plugin I started using recently, not just for my thieving guide, is the one-click summer garden. Once all the ghosts have a 0 on them after being caught, you can click on the tree in the middle after an audio cue plays for you to train quicker. The Mage Training Arena plugin is something you won't be using for too long, but this place sucks so much that doing it without the plugin is straight up masochism. It will help you do the activities much quicker, so you can get the hell out of it ASAP. The Time Tracker plugin will let you know when certain things are ready, like your crops, compost bins, birdhouses, and much more. You can even configure it in a way to give you a notification to let you know when it's time to run it back. An extremely underrated plugin, at least to my knowledge, is Screen Markers. You can draw squares on your screen to help you know where you have to click for certain activities. I still use it at the Nightmare for the prayer shuffle because I'm still pretty fucking bad at it. If you're still in the early or mid game and you haven't gotten the quest cape yet, get yourself the Wiki Sync plugin. Once it's synced to your account and you visit the wiki, it will tell you if you meet the quest or skill requirements for a quest or diary. The Item Charges plugin is pretty straightforward. It will let you know how many charges your items have without needing to right-click on them. This will help avoid embarrassing situations like running out of blowpipe charges at the fight caves. One of the most common questions I get on streams is how to hide certain prayers on the prayer tab. Turn on the prayer plugin, right-click the prayer icon, and then use filter and the reorder options to make the tab look however you want. The Ground Markers plugin has become an essential tool in recent years for you to know where to stand at all times when scaling or bossing. It's actually so important that it inspired an entire video by Jimmy, which you should definitely go check out. To finish this category, I have a 2-for-1. Get both bank tabs and bank tag layouts to make your bank look like this. I go more into detail during my bank organization video, and I will further talk about it in my upcoming plugins video for 2024. For like the 12 of you who mainly use the mobile client to play, I have a few good ones for you. More recent phones should have a battery saving feature. Turn it off for higher performance but less battery time, or on for it to last longer at slight FPS cost. Some of the best activities to do in mobile are AFK in case you're at work or doing something else that requires low attention. Use this time to train things like woodcutting, fishing, or my personal least favorite, the Nightmare Zone. For the next ones, go to settings and then pop out at the bottom of the list. The first thing you will notice is the skill icon on the top right. This will track your experience between sessions and will only do so on your current device. Taking a page from Runelite, the mobile client also tracks loot from bossing and other areas, such as scaling resources, so you know exactly how much money you're making when grinding the game on your phone, which is pretty handy. You can also enable the grounded tags option, and you won't see as much text on the screen when you have multiple items on the ground. It also helps for you to see what's on the floor if you are hunting for an important item. By far, the best one is a clue helper option. This is basically Jagex telling you where to go and what to do to solve clue scrolls all the time, which has rendered the traditional way of solving them 100% useless and irrelevant. Well, not that anyone liked it. This icon on the left will change the action of your taps when active. This is the best way to drop items when training skills such as fishing, mining, and woodcutting, so you can toss all your items on the ground and continue training. The button will also change how certain items behave. One of the best uses of this is both filling and emptying runecrafting pouches, a coal bag, and a gem bag, just to mention a few. If you train like this on mobile, make sure to double check if this setting helps. You can also enable the game to let you know if you're about to be logged out when skilling for extended periods of time. This notification will also let you know if you have gotten bird nests from woodcutting, for example. Last but not least, some phones have split screen mode, so you can both play RuneScape and, let's say, watch a video on a different part of your screen. This will make the grind a little more bearable, and it's a blessing if you can't play on a PC. We now jump onto general settings. Unless you are at, for example, the Bounty Hunter for points, I recommend having the PK skull prevention toggled on at all times. This way, you are not going to accidentally click on players in the wealthy or be skulled tricked by rats. You can also avoid accidentally attacking NPCs by setting the NPC left-click option to always be hidden. This is especially useful at places like RD Knights for left-click pickpocketing and to avoid gaining combat experience. To become more efficient at PvM, or just the game in general, enable the use of F keys in the settings menu. You can then customize different tabs like inventory, prayer, and magic spells to certain F keys to access them a lot quicker. For some odd reason, you have to enable the option for you to close pretty much any interface with the escape key on your keyboard. This is a lot better than having to click the X button, which is pretty tiny compared to others. A tip I have mentioned before is for you to hide roofs at all times. By going to the settings and disabling roofs when you're outside a building, this way you can see things you can interact with inside like banks or shops. Also in the settings menu, search the word dart and disable the option for you to make them bit by bit. If you do so, you can make darts as fast as possible, and it makes fletching one of the fastest 99s in the entire game, granted you have the money for it. There is also an option for you to use the middle mouse button to move your camera around instead of the arrows on your keyboard. If your mouse allows it, you can also map the middle button to a side button to make it a lot more comfortable. Remember the tap to drop button during the mobile section? Another tip that makes its way back into this video is the shift click option. Enable the setting to drop items when you click on them by holding shift, and it is a great way to drop items when scaling as well. You can right click the magic icon to enable spell filtering. When it's on, you can click on the filter option below and filter spells based on things like spells you don't have the level 4, teleport spells, utility spells, combat, and much more. Finally, search combat achievements in the settings menu for you to filter combat achievements if you fail them, being able to see if you would have failed the combat achievement even if you already have it, and much more. Okay, let's now jump to alt skills, starting with melee. Did you know that the Abyssal Dagger special attack was changed to give it a little bit of love and compete with other weapons in this category? It's definitely a nice weapon to train strength. If you happen to be using the Soul Reaper axe, especially for bossing, make sure to use the special towards the end of the kill to dump the stacks and heal you. Otherwise, you will lose them waiting for the boss to spawn and lose even more HP. At the time of making this video, Jagex is still looking for feedback when it comes to changes and rebalance to things like weapons, most importantly the Fang and the Scythe, which might be changed a bit in case you want to acquire them soon. Thanks to the release of the Phantom Muspa and the Venator bow a year ago, you can now AFK train ranged on something other than Ammonite crabs and the cannon at the training camp north of Ardi. It's definitely a fun weapon to use for AoE damage. Something I learned recently is that the Chinchompa accuracy is based on the style you use and how far away your target is. For example, Short Fuse has 100% accuracy against targets close to you, so make sure to change it depending on what you're doing. If you're lucky enough to have a Zerite crossbow, its passive effect strengthens bolt effects by 10%. This is mainly used to deal 110 damage instead of 100 against the big bosses with enchanted ruby bolts, and has other cool boosting effects. When training prayer by offering bones at an altar, you can both move your inventory by holding Alt like we said before, and use the bone on the bottom right slot in your inventory, since it will be the last one used during your offerings. On the topic of offering bones, the Zealot outfit has a chance of saving bones when being offered at an altar. You obtain these robes at the Shades of Morton activity, but don't take them to the Wildy as you could lose it if PK'd at the wrong time. And speaking of Shades of Morton, did you know that the only way to gain profit through the prayer skill is by cremating shade remains in Morton? The higher the shade you cremate, the better loot from chests open with the keys you get. Jumping onto magic, I'm sure you're familiar with the Imbued Heart. By using 150,000 Ancient S's from the Phantom Muspa, you can turn it into a Saturated Heart. This is basically a divine potion for magic, and you will keep the boost for 5 minutes. Also from the Phantom Muspa, you can obtain an item called an Ancient Icon. If you combine it with an Ancient Staff, you will gain cool additional bonuses when casting Ancient spells, which are further increased with the Quartz gems from DT2 bosses. Another new item added in 2023 was the Warped Scepter, thanks to the addition of a RuneScape 3 quest by the name The Path of Glufry. This is a trident-like weapon that aims to bridge the gap between the Iban Staff and the Trident of the Seas. A quality of life update made it so you can configure your rune pouch to automatically store runes you obtain from runecrafting to avoid having to bank them. Talk to the magic tutor in Lumbridge and have this setting on at all times. There is now a brand new way to make runes in the Scar after completion of Desert Treasure 2. The Scar Essence Mine mainly aims for Ironmen to have a better time making blood runes, and I might have to make a video on it later, as I can't really fit it in this one. I'm sure a lot of you dreaded the time to train runecrafting to do an achievement diary. But if you wear the full runecrafting outfit, you have a chance to make more runes on an altar, which actually counts towards some of the diary requirements. When training construction, the Mahogany Homes plugin is an absolute blessing when participating in said activity. It will show you where you have to go, what materials you need, and what items in the house you must fix to finish the contract. If doing this, it would be a great idea to finish the quest Lunar Diplomacy to have access to the respective spellbook. If you use the NPC contact spell, you can talk to Amy remotely for another contract without having to go back to Falador. Related to your POH, if you wish to find shooting stars on your own, you can build a telescope and see if there are any stars nearby when they fall. Just make sure to avoid building the telescope on a window looking directly at another wall. When you train agility, did you know that the marks of grace at the RD rooftop don't despawn? This is because they always appear on the same spot, and if you get a new one, it's just basically going to refresh the timer of all existing marks of grace. Did you know that the Ring of Endurance counts as a Saradomin item? I didn't know this until I was doing a Master Clue step that requires talking to the Zami Mage in Varrock, and he rejects you if you're wearing any Saradomin items. Something that has been in the game for quite a long time but didn't remember until recently is that Shazian also features agility courses for you to train in case you want to give them a try. Either that or if you are a Zaya-locked Ironman. Recent additions to the game have also given us new potions to use for the Herblore skill. We have potions like Ancient Brews, Menophyte Remedies, and Forgotten Brews. Their effects are decent but not the most efficient to train with. In case you're an Ironman or just looking for more profit, another new item added recently is a scaly blue dragon hide. When using a knife on it, you will get noted blue dragon hide, and it's basically like a giant egg sac you get from Sarachnis. If you're looking to train Hunter in a more interactive way, the Herbivore is the way to go. The higher Herblore level, the higher chance at better herbs you get out of every catch. At level 80 Hunter, you should also have a decent Herblore level. For Thieving, stealing artifacts from Piscarilius is a fun and engaging activity. To make this slightly faster, teleport to Piscarilius right after asking Captain Khalid for a new task, since it will save you a few seconds instead of running to the houses. Thanks to a few changes to the Achievement Diary rewards, the Pharaoh Scepter can now hold more charges based on the tier of Desert Diary you complete. This goes up to 100 with the Elite tier, which is super convenient if you're doing Pyramid Plunder. This one has to do with agility, but it's also related to pyramids. If you're doing low-level agility training and money making at the agility pyramid, sell the pyramid top after every single run, since the item is pretty heavy and will hinder your run energy. When it comes to crafting, a new money making method I learned about recently is making drift nets from jute fiber at Fossil Island. These will always be needed thanks to drift net fishing, and it's great to make a cash early on. If you train crafting with molten glass by making light orbs, remember that you cannot sell these items and you can't even note them. Once you're done with them, the best idea would be to incinerate them directly from the bank. You can also make money by making gem bracelets, and my tip for this one would be to always check gem prices before buying or selling, as the margin for these items is fairly small, so you have to process them relatively fast. Thanks to Desert Treasure 2 bosses dropping rune and the Dragon Javelin heads, training with them is a lot cheaper nowadays, and even competes with other fletching training methods. This excludes darts, which are still the absolute fastest in the entire game. If you make darts or bolts, you might be clicking each of them once to make a set of 10. If you want to go a little easier, you can double click the darts or bolts, and then the feathers to reduce movement, and it doesn't change speed that much. Finally, if you're also on a tight budget and you want to train fletching, a fairly AFK method features gems. You can use a chisel on cut gems to turn them into dart tips, which are needed to make enchanted bolts, and will always be on demand. If you haven't been paying attention to questing updates, the Path of Gluffery brings the total quest points up to 300, meaning that we now have an additional block slot for Slayer, so you can avoid another one of your least favorite tasks. When a superior Slayer monster appears, you can start attacking it right away, even if you're in single-way combat area. They take priority over your current target, and you cannot be attacked by anything else after engaging. If someone comes up to you during your Dust Devil task and asks you to take your Slayer helmet off to see your haircut, don't be a noob and don't fall for it. You will almost instantly die due to the Dust Devils dealing massive damage if you're not wearing it. For Hunter, my biggest tip that's only relevant until the release of Valimor would be to wait to level up so you can make use of the Hunter Guild. This is going to bring massive changes to the skill, starting with Hunter contracts. When doing birdhouse runs, always take 40 seeds with you. This way, if you still have seeds after setting up your last house, it means you forgot to add seeds to one of them. It's extremely frustrating coming back and realizing you forgot to add some. If you want to switch it up and train Hunter via aerial fishing, I would personally always click on the fishing spot closest to the island so your bird catches the fish faster. These spots farther away will take a lot longer to reach, wasting a few ticks. After a recent update, the Motherlode mine now has more veins on the lower level. Previously, you needed to mine some rocks to get to a few veins west of the water wheels, but you don't need to do that anymore, which is slightly faster. Also, after the whole Duke Succulus AFK salt mining got nerfed, shooting stars is a lot more AFK since the amount of people on it doesn't really affect the time it takes to deplete. And as an added bonus, stars can no longer spawn in lower tiers for more AFK time. And speaking of nerfs, if you were one of the people griefing Guardians of the Rift by just AFK mining, this has also been affected and you can only gain experience for 250 fragments. This aims to reduce the amount of useless people in the room. Another great quality of life added to the game was the ability to make the same item at an anvil by pressing the space bar. This was to add some consistency with other actions such as fletching and crafting, so we are swapping a click for a keystroke. If you're looking to train smithing with Giant's Foundry, always use the two types of metal available at your level. These are called alloys, which are more difficult to work with, but will yield more experience and reputation per hour. Once you unlock all of the molds at the Giant's Foundry and you wish to continue training, you can use the wiki to look at the best mold combination for each sword commission you receive. Some are not as obvious, so it helps out a lot when starting. We move on to fishing, and if you're a main account, I would strongly suggest not to training at minnows. Sharks have massively decreased in price because of bots, so you're not gonna make as much cash. Any iron account should definitely still do this for sharks. One of the more interesting fishing methods for free-to-play champions is within the ruins of Camdozel. I'm not well versed on fishing training methods here other than fly fishing at Barbarian Village, so this is just to do if you want a new location. Something I also learned recently is that if you wear a crystal harpoon at Temporos, you have a chance to catch a crystallized harpoonfish. This gives less points but more experience per catch, as they cannot be cooked. One of the most popular cooking training methods is making jugs of wine. You can use grapes on jugs of water in quick succession to wait for a big XP drop. If you log out and back in on time, you can save the XP drop and continue the session. However, the fastest way to train cooking is by doing something called one-tick karamblan. It is recommended to do this at the Myths Guild, and you have to use a karamblan at a range every tick while holding down the number 2 key. Finally, as most of you know, there's a higher chance of successfully cooking food at ranges as opposed to fires. If you use the Hoseidius kitchen instead, you will have an even higher chance of a successful cook thanks to its passive effect. Old school RuneScape now has a truly AFK fire making method. Make a fire, and then right-click it for a new option called Add Logs to the Fire. You will add logs in your inventory for it to slowly burn, but each one will give you 33% experience for the log. One of the best spots to train firemaking traditionally is at the Grand Exchange. Go to these spots close to the path between the GE and the castle, and by burning all of the logs you will end up in one tile away from the bank to rinse and repeat. Don't forget that after completion of making friends with my arm, you have access to Eternal Fires. This includes passive effects to avoid having stats drained above Godwar's dungeon, food not rotting in the Mortimer swamp, and much more. The Woodcutting plugin has built-in tools to help you with all your forestry events. Even the second round of events can now be done brainlessly by just clicking on the highlighted boxes after interacting with them at least a few times for a solution. The clothes pouch is an item that can be attached to a forestry kit, and you can store either a lumberjack or forestry outfit in it. This allows you to gain passive effect of either set to clothes while rocking your usual fashionscape when woodcutting. Another set of new items from forestry are two-handed axes. Their passive effect makes it so you receive 10% more experience, but a 20% chance of not receiving a log when chopping. This obviously means more AFK and more experience. When you do your farm trips now, just in case you forgot to wear your magic secateurs, their effects should still trigger even if it's in your inventory. I have no idea why this change was added, as it's not really that difficult to remember. Make sure to plant expensive seeds on patches that cannot catch the seeds, which are the Troll Stronghold, Vice, and Hosidius. You might still want to add super or ultra compost on them for increased yield, but they won't die at all. If you get a farming contract you are not happy with, you can simply choose a lower tier contract. This means that if you are on the lowest type of contract already, you can't really do much about it, so hopefully you don't get a fruit tree task. We now jump onto PvM. For the Phantom Uspa, if the first face is green, the first special attack will be the teleport around the room. If the first face is brown, the first special will be the spikes following you around, so you can plan around this. For the teleporting special, if you stand on this tile quick enough, you will not be hit by any orb. You can still get hit if you take a long time to get here, and you can find the tile in my Muspa guide, and it's a must-have for this boss. If you want the Muspa to spawn faster, grab your loot and leave the instance to come back once again. For some odd reason, a lot of bosses take too long to respawn, so it's just quicker to leave and start the fight once again. To make the new single combat wildy bosses more balanced, Artio can now be killed with Mage more efficiently. Prior to a recent update, it had fairly high magic defensive stats, which made it pretty annoying to even freeze him in his place. When hunting Spindle, it's a little more convenient to do so using melee. When it does the spiderweb attack, you will be quickly damaged when standing on it, so if you're using melee, you will naturally follow the spider around, avoiding this mechanic. Finally, for Calvarion, when it's doing the transition from purple to orange, you can stand in the middle of the circle of lightning to start attacking as soon as possible. This is a lot faster than moving away from lightning and coming back. An extremely common question on stream is how to know where the monsters are going to spawn during the fight caves. Get yourself the FC Spawn Predictor plugin to see where the next wave of monsters will appear to prepare for the set. I also recommend a plugin called Ground Object Hider. Copy the numbers in the description on the settings of the plugin to hide all the bright red in the Tazar area, which helps a whole ton by not causing a seizure if you're here for longer than 1 hour. Finally, if you're just getting into the fight caves and Jad, remember that the mage attack also plays as soon as the attack starts, whereas the ranged attack sound plays only after you get hit, so ideally pray ranged first when you start. The Theater of Blood entry mode saw a number of changes to make it a lot easier and more forgiving to players. The most important being unlimited attempts and healing items if you die. Hardcore Ironmen will still lose their status if they die here. For the Kalphite Queen, if you're using the Lunar Spellbook for more DPS with Vengeance, make sure to go in there with Protect from Melee active, otherwise the Kalphite Guardians could hit you and waste the Vengeance. If you didn't know, the Kalphite Queen now drops the Dragon Pickaxe, and it's another reason for their massive drop in price along with the new baby versions of the Wildy bosses. It's a 1 in 400 drop if you're feeling lucky and don't want to go to the Wildy. Jagex made Easyscape even easier, and this time around, the Corrupted Hunlef makes a particular sound when it's about to change combat styles. I understand the visual cue when the transition happens, but this one was a little bit too much. Time for Desert Treasure 2 bosses, starting with the Leviathan. If the first set of rocks appears west and east, the first special attack will be lightning. If the rocks are north and south, the first special will be debris. For the enraged phase at 20%, the Abyssal Protector, which is the orb, will appear northwest if no rocks are blocking the spawn. If there are rocks, it will appear northeast instead, going clockwise until it finds an empty location. For the enraged phase, it's recommended to bring a Web Weaver bow to be done with it super quick. If you don't have one, bring a blowpipe since you will be almost 100% accurate if you walk along the orb, and the faster DPS the better. For Vardorvis, avoid starting the fight with a special attack. It will either receive massively reduced damage or completely tank it. Hit him once, and then do the second hit with a special attack if you have items like a Voidwaker or Claws. If you hog the walls when fighting Vardorvis, you will always skip the spikes coming out of the ground. He still does the attack, but for some odd reason spikes cannot spawn in these locations, and it's recommended to always stay here. Download a plugin called Vardorvis Projectiles. This makes it so you can change how the projectiles look, giving them the chambers or TOA projectiles for the ranged and magic styles. This is especially important for the Awakened version. For the Whisperer, it is recommended to bring in a Cursed Scepter and do a special at the beginning of the fight. If you have a Tunican Shadow, avoid doing this as the magic defense reduction is almost negligible because of your crazy accuracy. Even if you want to try something new, fighting the Whisperer at melee distance is 100% impossible because of her insane damage if you get close to her. A few people playing Leagues 4 with melee combat relic were pretty sad when learning this. When you fight the Whisperer, remember that prayer is drained quicker when you are in the Shadow Realm. It helps memorizing the special attacks and leaving as soon as possible to save on prayer, and this is almost mandatory for the Awakened version. For Duke Succulus, the tiles right next to the mushrooms will always be safe from shadows that can stun and damage you. Of course, if you want to AFK inside the instance, it would be better to do it near a door, but it's just another option. When you're harvesting mushrooms, you can tick manipulate them, and grab a second one automatically after using a pestle and mortar on one of them. It's not insanely useful, but definitely saves a little bit of time during preparation phase. Finally, if you click on either mushroom spot after you defeat the Duke, you will safely go to the starting location by completely skipping the laser since the fight won't even have started by the time you reach these spots. And now for a few random ones to close out the 130. One of the best updates in recent memory was the rune pouch not becoming empty after death. It was such a pain claiming your items and filling your pouch once again, but that's a thing of the past. You may now use a special attack orb in the wilderness, and you no longer need to go to the combat tab to activate a weapon's special effect. This is slightly more convenient if you're doing a little bit of bossing or wildy slayer. If you visit the hairdresser, you now have more options to rock a new haircuts based on whatever you want your character to look like. I would rock a new haircut, but my character is almost always wearing something that would not let me see his hair. If you play Bounty Hunter, be careful with people trying to kill you unfairly by casting Fire Surge and another one doing some sort of special attack. This happened to me and was a little frustrating since these cockroaches wouldn't stop. And finally, by doing the hard Wildy Diary, you no longer have a teleport delay when you are at the Revenant Caves, for which for some reason Jagex thought it was not a human-like reaction to teleport as soon as you saw a PKer. It's pretty neat. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this chunky video. Thank you so much for watching and for making it this far. If you did, leave a comment with your #1 tip for old school RuneScape you didn't see, or just your favorite one from the video. If you do so, include the term RSN in your comment, along with your RuneScape name, and we will pick a random person on Friday's stream to win a bond. A massive thank you to all my channel members for going the extra mile and supporting us. My wife, my puppy, and I cannot thank you enough for it. If you want to be part of this list of legends, click the join button below and see all the cool perks you can get by supporting the channel monetarily. In the next one, we might talk about the future of old school RuneScape regarding a few combat changes that could potentially make their way into the game. I hope you have an amazing day, have an amazing week, and I will see you then. Peace.